Hey Dunchbags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and it is time for my review of the debut EP from DROELOE. This one is called A Moment in Time. I don't want to spend a ton of time covering this EP, and I probably would have just featured it in my rapid fire review series, which I'm probably going to do an episode of soon, but I thought it would be important to cover DROELOE in a full-length video, just because I've only talked about the duo very briefly in my Monstercat Top 5 videos, and at the least, I think DROELOE deserves a little bit more than a couple of quick mentions. And that is not only because I believe DROELOE is putting out some of the best music on both Monstercat and BITBIRD, but I believe DROELOE to be one of the most innovative duos in EDM right now. If you're not familiar with DROELOE and what they do, I think their general style and mission was summed up really well by the Reddit user Hungry Ghost, who did a DROELOE appreciation thread on the Monstercat Reddit, and he said, "In a world filled with the same supersaws, FM wobs, and screechy leads, Vincent and Hein, aka DROELOE, have brought us inspiring original music with beautiful melodies, creative sound design, and masterful composition." Now, I'll be the first to admit, I for one had a really hard time getting into DROELOE at first. In fact, when I first got the promo email for Bon Voyage a couple weeks before the song released on Monstercat, I had listened to the song on my MacBook speakers, and I honestly didn't think the song was anything that special. It took me until the song actually came out and I listened to it on some better headphones that I realized, wow, these guys make some really seriously immersive music. And a big part about that with DROELOE is that it boils down to their sound design. They generally lean toward analog over digital and processed. Everything is very rich, very textured, very organic. They use a variety of different samples that I can comfortably say I've never heard in electronic music before. But the thing is, DROELOE is in a very similar situation to artists like Rez, where they're able to take a very underground sound that shouldn't really go mainstream and kind of push that to a more wide appealing audience. A big part of it might be because they're so close to San Holo, who's absolutely been blowing up over the last couple years. I mean, they made a song with him fairly recently as well, but DROELOE gets millions of streams on their songs, and it's been kind of weird. And while I may have a hard time seeing just how DROELOE came to popularity, I regardless am a huge fan of their music, and at least up to this EP, I don't think there was a single song following Bon Voyage that I didn't absolutely love coming from DROELOE, and I managed to find a lot of stuff in their back-end pre-Monstercat discography that I really loved as well, like ZZZ and All Day with Holly. And I guess that bears the question, what did I think about DROELOE's debut EP? Did I love it? Did I hate it? I guess the answer is simply no. This EP definitely isn't going to be anything polarizing for DROELOE fans. I mean, it's generally what you'd come to expect from DROELOE, a mixture of chill trap and future bass. The most interesting thing that this EP has to offer, outside of DROELOE's incredible sound design that appears once again a few different times on this EP, is probably its conceptual approach. The EP being called A Moment in Time kind of tries to encapsulate the 20-year time frame between 1997 and 2017. Interestingly enough, the same time frame I've been alive for. And while this concept seems to be well thought out, which I respect a lot, I don't think it was executed in the best possible way. The intro to the project Back When, aka 1997, actually sets up the EP very nicely, with this kind of crackly bell sound leading listeners into the EP that kind of sounds like it could have been ripped from one of those old claymation Christmas movies on VHS, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. That's particularly what it reminded me of. The chords kind of lead in, and then we get what I think is supposed to sound to the EP's listeners like it's some kind of soundbite from an old recording in 1997. The problem with this is that I soon realized that it wasn't an actual recording from 1997, but rather someone in 2017 trying to tell a kid to say Happy New Year 1997, which kind of drained the emotion out of it for me a little bit. Regardless, I think this intro transitions very nicely into track number 2, Sunburn. Sunburn is easily my favorite track on this EP, and debatably one of my favorites DROELOE has ever put out, and I think a big part of that is that they kind of combine these really emotional, tense chords with this electric guitar line in the beginning that's very like early Blink-182-esque for me. It kind of sounds like something that could have come off of Enema of the State. I kind of even half expected Mark Hoppus to come in and start singing on this track when I heard it for the first time. Along with that, I'd like to reference what my friend John, who you might know better as the Red Hawk director, said about this song, in that it kind of uses a generic future bass sound to lead in the drop, but then they do something very interesting with it. Like I mentioned earlier in this review, DROELOE doesn't take it and make everything sound super processed and super generic. They do a lot of very interesting things, even if the lead sound in this is kind of a little little bit overused, they managed to flip it in their own unique DROELOE way. On the opposite end of the spectrum though, the very next track, Lilypads, is arguably my least favorite track DROELOE has ever put together. I think a big part of that dislike comes out of the fact that DROELOE takes this vocal chop, which in my opinion isn't really that good or creative, and kind of makes it this quintessential piece of the track. Like, if you love the vocal chop, you're going to love this track, and if you hate it, then you're going to hate it, and that's kind of where I'm caught. On the other hand, I will say that I did really appreciate the song's kind of airy and ominous second drop. In fact, I think it's one of the better drops that are found on this EP. So no, I definitely didn't hate this song, but I also don't think that second drop completely redeemed it enough to the point where I'd call it one of my favorites. Up next on the track list, we get Homebound, which interestingly enough is by far the catchiest song that this EP has to offer. My problem with this song definitely doesn't lie in its structure or its production. In fact, I would have really liked to see this song as a single release rather than being found on this EP, because when it comes to A Moment in Time, this song is so uncharacteristically happy and upbeat. Like, the rest of the EP all the way through is very kind of emotional and somber, and then DROELOE kind of just slaps listeners in the face with this song like, here, have some bright, happy melodies. And like I said, I really like this song. I just don't think it fits on this EP. In fact, I think just about any of their other BITBIRD releases could have worked better in this track's place. Lines of The Broken, Wake the Warrior, just about anything. Moving on from that, we get the closer of the EP, Just Now 2017, which is very heavily reflective of the EP's intro, except this one, kind of oppositely from Back When, doesn't really have any elements in it that are really screaming 2017 to me. I can say the song's guitar line kind of reminded me of Intro by the XX, which I guess you could consider modern, but even then, that song came out a full 8 years ago, so it's nothing super recent. And then of course the song closes with that same kind of bell sound that I mentioned when I was talking about Back When, which is kind of cool to see that sound kind of wrap the whole EP together into a little package. Like I said, there's some weird moments in the middle throughout that, but there are some cool transitional moments. I think this is one of them. I would have liked to see this song kind of in the same tempo as Back When, so it could have a literal total wraparound, like you end the EP and then you can literally just replay it and start exactly where it ends with a very seamless transition. I've kind of played around with that concept before, but I've never fully executed it. I wish DROELOE kind of would have been able to do that with this EP. Sadly, they don't. But overall, I guess this EP is a cool little concept project. I mean, it's really short. You can listen to it 4 times in 1 hour, which, I don't know, it kind of makes me itch for more. I kind of want to see a full-length album from DROELOE following this EP, just seeing how they were able to tackle a concept with this EP, even with it being so short. I think they're destined for greatness. I think this EP overall was very good, and I'm really excited to see what DROELOE is going to give us in the future. For A Moment in Time, I am feeling a strong 7.0 to a light 7.5 out of 10. I would strongly suggest this EP, and really DROELOE in general, to anyone who's really into unique sound design. I think DROELOE really kills it in that department. Even if this EP wasn't executed in the best possible way, I still think it was really good. As always, I have the Spotify link down in the description if you guys want to check this one out for yourselves, and if you have listened to it, I want to know your thoughts down in the comment section below. As always, I'm Landon Remixes. I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and I'll catch you later. Peace.